Hello, BookTube. I recently found this at a little free library. This is a poetry anthology from the 1930s called The New Poetry. Of course, isn't new anymore. It's almost a century old. And long after it came out, someone in grade school got this as a gift or had it in a classroom and wrapped it in one of these paper dust jacket things. The person didn't. I would have loved it if they put their school, their name, their classroom, but they didn't do it. Instead, they just wrapped it like this, and this sat in somebody's attic forever, for half a century, and somehow made it to a little free library. I'd love to know the story of that. But I remember this dust jacket well, so I grabbed this, and I've been having a blast going through it. It's just a fantastic poetry anthology, and it's allowed me to revive a habit of reading you a poem every day or whenever I can, and maybe nattering about it a little. I haven't received any real objections to my nattering, so I'm going to keep doing that at least when an idea occurs to me. And I've got a poet I want to read to you today. In fitting with it's a fitting theme with a little video that I also made today of the top 5 books written by ladies named Gladyss. So I thought I would read you a poem by someone named Gladyss. Her name was Gladys Cromwell, and her family, they were extremely wealthy in New York. Oh my God, the old house that they had was nothing short of a Medicean palace. And that family claimed that they were in direct lineal descent from Cromwell, from I think either Oliver Cromwell or Thomas Cromwell, or maybe both. New York families at the turn of the 20th century often made such claims. They knew that they were arrivistes. They knew that they were new rich, new money, and they didn't want to be. So they built ostentatiously, and they endowed ostentatiously, and they often made up fake family histories. So who knows? Cromwell is a ditch common name, or it was once upon a time. And Gladys and her sister were very close. They were best friends, and decided to go to war together, to be nurses, as close to or at the front lines, including at Verdun, uh, where they saw all sorts of things that Gladyss, anyway, never got a chance to write about. Probably unthinkable things. And I think you can sense that in a lot of her poetry, which she had at least one volume that was printed in Boston. I know that. It was in Boston bookstore windows. But again, as I'm a broken record here, but I'm sure that there's never been a biography. I'm sure that there are a ton of Cromwell family primary records that are sitting somewhere, probably bestowed to the New York Public Library or something like that, that no one's ever bothered to look at. Pictures, diary entries, letters, I'm sure all of that exists somewhere. Someone could write a biography of Gladys Cromwell. No one, as far as I know, ever has. No one's ever thought to collect her poetry, even though it is startlingly good and serious, sad and wise and serious. This was a young woman far, far older in her heart than on her birth certificate. So anyway, I want to read you one of her poems. This anthology, thankfully, has 5 or 6, and they're all wonderful. They're all absolutely wonderful. But I want to read you one called Folded Power. Sorrow can wait, for there is magic in the calm estate of grief. Lo, where the dust complies, wisdom lies. Sorrow can rest, indifferent, with her head upon her breast, idle and hushed, guarded from fears, content with tears. Sorrow can bide, with sealed lips and hands unoccupied. Sorrow can fold her latent might, dwelling with night. But sorrow will rise from her dream of somber and hushed eternities. Lifting a child, she will move softly with a mother's love. She will softly rise. Her embrace the dying will recognize, lifting them gently through strange delight to a clearer light. There's an almost impatience there, right? Almost a scorn for the simple ideas of sorrow. There's a call in this poem and in every other poem that Gladys Cromwell wrote. There's a call to action. There's a call to, yes, we are reposing in these finer sentiments, and Yes, they satisfied the generation before ours, but there has to be movement now. There has to be we get sorrow can wait, sorrow can rest, sorrow can bide. But when we get a but, when the poem begins to refute its setup, the way it does it is with action. It's with sorrow will rise. It will not wait. It will not rest. It will not bide. It will not do anything active. It will move, and that's true uh, with a lot of Gladys Cromwell's poetry. Should I read you another one? I don't know that I'll come back to Gladys Cromwell, and I love her poetry. This anthology reminded me that I love her poetry. I used to have the one famous volume that she had. She might have had others. I'll never see it. It'll never show up, even at the Brattle. It'll never show up. Let's read one more. Since you're indulging me, let's read one more. This one is called Renewal. Uh, can this be love men yield me in return for what I do? I hold a strange belief that love is not a tribute, nor a leaf, or laurel, nor a wage the soul can earn by any kind of doing. The concern of love is need, and love is the spare sheaf we glean from pain, the fruit of patient grief. Can this be love men yield me? Nay, I spurned their recompense who could so long refrain from giving. I spurned their recompense who could so long refrain from giving. I myself will grant the gift and prove what loving is. I'll finer sift my sorrow, make new songs distilled from pain. Above this hour of bitterness, I'll lift my spirit up and taste my grief again. It gives you a sense of what I'm talking about. This was a young woman who was impatient with the kind of pressed flower, suitable for the front room in low voices, millennial generational wisdom that was typically all young women were allowed to access in the early part of the 20th century, the earliest years of the 20th century. You would never guess from reading either one of these poems how young Gladys Cromwell was when she wrote them. They sound like poems that we have read on our daily poems, where they are the fruits of long and bitter experience written by poets who are old. But Alice Cromwell never got a chance to be old. She and her sister never got a chance to be old. They saw unspeakable things at the front, at Verdun. Read some soldier memoirs from Verdun, and you'll get a hint of what they saw. And they had to act, which is, I think, why so much of that is present in her poetry. Frontline nurses couldn't just faint away. They had to be extremely tough. They had to be able to move in and do things. And like so many of what I don't hesitate to call their male comrades, it really worked on them. It really damaged them in a way that, for all the faults that I always point out about the 21st century, at least we're more aware of the psychological damage, the psychological scars that someone can receive from battle that aren't physical, but that need every bit as much care if you're going to recover from them. Very little of that was known at the time. Shell shock was a very nebulous umbrella of a term, and there were, I hate to say it, but it's true, a whole bunch of doctors, both in Europe and in America, who thought that not only was shell shock nebulous, but that only men could have it, and that ladies couldn't have it. And Gladys Cromwell and her sister did. And they were on a ship back home and decided to kill themselves together. They jumped overboard together. So the long career that Gladys Cromwell would have had as a poet, I have no doubt of it. I have no doubt she would have been one of the most lauded poets in American history, certainly in 20th century history. Never got a chance to happen. She died barely 30. Having had, to put it mildly, lots of other things to do other than write poems. I wish that biography existed. If she had been born in a train shack in Tennessee, I would say the primary documents aren't available, but I know they are. I know they are. Somewhere in New York, either in a library archive or in a family room, is everything you would need to write an incredibly moving biography of this poet. But I thought, indulge me. I read you two poems instead of one, and it's a day for Gladyss. But we'll move on to a different poet next time. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.